Shalom, welcome to the Jewish View. My name is Rabbi Nachman Simon with the Chabad House of Delmar, and today we're going to talk about an interesting book that's excerpted from the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and here it is. It's called Mind Over Matter, where the Lubavitcher Rebbe, you could say, hey, wait a minute, this is a rabbi, and what are you talking about, science, technology, and medicine? But the beauty of the Rebbe was, of course, he was a great rabbinical leader. But besides that, he actually did have a degree in engineering from the Sorbonne in France, and also a degree at University of Berlin. This is all before World War II. But in any case, that he was very much interested in science, and he talked science with many scientists. Many people came to him, and he was very educated in science, and they were amazed. You know, they said, well, here's a rabbi. What's a rabbi know about science? But not only, of course, did he know his rabbinics and his Judaism, of course, but he did also was very well versed in the sciences. So we're going to take a few ideas here, and today we're going to talk about aviation and space. And of course, that you can learn something from everything. This is a basic idea in Judaism, where it's not, well, there's religion, you know, again, they say versus science. There's no versus science. Really, it's together, religion and science, that they work together. Because ultimately, Judaism says that God made everything. Not only did he write the Bible, but he also made the world. And what's the world? The world is science. Science just means, hey, we're going to try to understand how things work. And obviously there is a system. There's chemistry, periodic table, biology. Obviously, there's a very important and very systematic system in the world, and that's what we call science, and really it should be no contradiction at all. Sometimes there is, and that's very interesting to try to put the two ideas together, but we've done that before in the past. Today we're just going to look at things that, hey, here's natural science and something we could learn from. So this is aviation and space, pressure and lift. The developers of the first quote-unquote flying machines, which now of course we call airplanes, but they were just literally flying machines, were faced with two options. A, using materials that are lighter than air, such as hot air, hydrogen. This is similar to Maimonides' statement that wood floats because it is lighter than the water. Now Maimonides, of course, was lived about 850 years ago. And again, that's what I'm saying, the greatest rabbis did actually know their science, and they were great scientists in their own right. And B, copying birds' movements, pushing the air creates pressure, which lifts the aircraft. Although the first method seems to be easier and more reliable, the second method is the one that was favored, and is the main method of aviation nowadays. We don't go around in hot air balloons, obviously, we just push the air and then we get elevated. In spiritual terms, it is impossible to achieve true upward movement without opposition. Just as the air's opposition is employed to create a stronger upward movement than that which could be attained using flotation, so too for a person to transcend the materialism of the world and get closer to God, it is not enough to involve the good inclination alone. It is specifically through the evil inclination's opposition and the resultant extra drive to overcome it that one attains a more powerful lift and hence greater heights. According to Hasidic thought, the reason that air at lower altitudes is warmer than higher air masses is that sunlight is strengthened when reflected by the ground. This is the advantage of a reflected light, which is strengthened upon facing opposition, over a direct light, which has only its own strength. This too is the advantage of the divine service of those who have faced adversity and overcome it. Bali Tshuva, which in Hebrew means the returnees to God, literally masters of return, over those who are righteous all along. Meaning that this is very interesting, so I hope you don't miss the point, but I will explain it further. Meaning, really the bigger question is, why did God put us in a situation, a very difficult world? I mean, some people don't have it so hard, but in any case, surely to be spiritual is difficult. I mean, listen, people have to make a living. People moan and groan, oh, I got to work. Why can't the food just be on my doorstep? It was in the manna from heaven during the desert, so God could do it. Why do I have to go to work? And of course, you have to go to high school and you go to college, and it's obviously a lot of work to get all these degrees and then prepare and then go to work. And that's what you do really for the most of your life until you get pretty old, and then you're ready to retire. But then you're an old man and woman already and used up the majority of your life working. So why, and on and on. Obviously, there's bigger problems in the world. People have diseases. They have to overcome so many challenges. And, you know, you can just think of them yourself, and you know all the challenges you have to deal with in life. And things aren't easy, in other words. Well, why? Why did God make it so difficult in this to live in this world? So the answer is, he's giving the answer. That's what I'm saying. If you caught it, you'd understand it. But listen to it carefully, that through the resistance, you could say, use any word you want, the obstacles, the troubles, the problems, whatever synonym you want to use, but really they're all the same idea, the resistance. So he's telling you it's like a plane. You actually go higher. That, you know, like a lot of times, I know, you know, of course I'm a rabbi, so I deal with so many people pour out their heart to me and so many problems, to say the very least. But certain people, you know, get knocked down from it. Oh, I can't go on. I'm depressed. It's so difficult. Which, you know, obviously I understand why it's difficult. On the other hand, then you see some people that they take difficulties in life and they transcend them, and they move higher than them, and they take all the problems and that they became better for them. And, you know, it's just your attitude, really, and that's why he's saying the Hasidic thought. He's trying to tell you that you could actually go higher. Many, many people, and not to get into all the examples, but that fills a library of books, how many people have gone to greater heights even though they, you know, had two strikes against them, physically, mentally, they were abused, whatever, certain things happened in their life, and they transcended all their problems and became great people. So that's really the proper attitude to look at when there's, oh, it's difficult, but how much can you transcend, be lifted up by the problems instead of being put down? It's a very, very deep idea. It's really there's what to talk about, and a lot more to talk about it. But this is what the Rebbe is trying to bring out, that we can learn from a plane by having the resistance. That's how you can actually lift yourself higher. Now, space flight. All of the above is true only where there is an atmosphere. What is done where there is no atmosphere, or where the density of the air is very low? How can one generate upward movement in the absence of resistance? How can one travel in space? Rather than dwelling on the scientific solution to this problem, we'll focus instead on the spiritual analog of such a mode of divine service. The prophet tells us that in the future all evil will be banished from the world. How then will we be able to continue ascending from level to level within goodness and holiness in the absence of opposition? Good question. So what's going to happen in the future? You won't have any resistance. The absence of external opposition itself will create an internal, self-generated pressure within holiness itself. The attribute of chesed, which in Hebrew means loving kindness, flows from above to below, meaning like for the giver to the recipient. Gevura, stringency, on the other hand, is expressed through elevation and a yearning for that which is higher. Through harmoniously blending the two and serving God in both directions, a service which is an expression of the attribute of Tiferes, splendor, an upward movement is created. Thus, without any external push, one is able to reach ever higher until the ultimate goal, when Israel, the Jewish people, the Torah, and the Holy One, blessed be He, are all one. Meaning that sometimes you can just go straight higher and get a direct a direct connection without having to go through the stringency of going through this resistance of moving higher and higher. You need a harmonious blend. Balance is very important. Certain things you can just transcend and certain things you have to overcome. Multi-stage rockets. One of the problems faced by the engineers of rockets and space shuttles was that of fuel. Sending a large and heavy craft to move around in space requires a tremendous quantity of fuel. However, the fuel in the tanks to hold it adds enormously to the weight of the spacecraft. This in turn requires even more fuel, resulting in an apparently insoluble dilemma. To resolve this, they divided the rocket into several sections. When a part of the journey is concluded, the fuel has been completely drained from that section, then that fuel tank can be separated from the main body of the rocket and dropped. The rocket with the remaining fuel tanks becomes lighter and uses less energy for the next stage. This continues throughout. The other fuel tanks are also jettisoned, each at the proper time, and the rocket is able to continue on its way with less drag. The lesson we can derive from this in our divine service is as follows. The Holy One, blessed be, demands of the Jewish people to live a life of form, spirituality over matter. This is not an easy job in this physical world, especially since we have an evil inclination. In order that our reward not be undeserved, it is necessary that there be some challenge, so that our service of God should come as a result of our own free choice. But why do we need to be faced with such a great, heavy, and evil inclination, so much so that he who is greater than his friends is also faced by a greater inclination, and that's a Talmud. Meaning, again, let me digress, which I always do. I always get on my tangents in all my classes, but I need to explain this. Meaning, this is a very, very important point that he's really not talking about. He's just making a point of it. But the question would be, Jews, well, maybe the greater you are, the easier it gets. In a certain sense, that's because that's a worldly view, meaning that you would think, well, like we were talking about before, it's difficult to go to work. Well, if you're rich and you're a millionaire, hey, man, you know, you don't have to worry about that. You don't have to get up and get to a 9-to-5 job every day. The truth is, that's really not true, because really everybody has their challenges in life. All right, they don't have to worry about paying their shopping bill, of course, but they have other challenges. But in any case, even if you think it's easier, so you say, well, what if you're a high-level spiritual person? You also have it easier. You don't have to worry about the lower evil inclination of doing wrong and bad things. You're above it. But the answer is, from this Gemara, that is totally not true. It's like we just said, someone who's greater than his friends is faced by a greater inclination. The challenges are greater. So when you see a greater holy person, and really in Judaism, they actually have greater challenges than someone has not. So it's very interesting. People are always trying to get out of things, like the song from Fiddler on the Roof, if I was a rich man, things would be easier. Well, rich people have their challenges too. Life is never easy for anybody. If anything, it may be certain times it even gets harder the greater you are. And you say, well, I'd like to be president of the United States. You don't think he has so many problems? You don't think he has incredible problems on his head? Yeah, it's nice to go around, living in the White House, and I got security force, and people stand up for me, and they applaud. But the challenges are also incredible for a person like that. So nobody gets off easy. That's the bottom line. And it's, if anything, the greater you are, the greater your challenges. But in any case, even a fight against a much more easily conquerable evil inclination would be enough to give our work meaning. But the point that really is, the beauty of it, on the contrary, is not to get you depressed, oh, I have to have so many challenges in life, but that's really the meaning of life, that you can overcome these challenges. The explanation is, it is impossible to rise to greater heights without an equal quantity of heavy physicality and materialism. However, the greater the quantity, the more energy needed to spur it to those heights. In order to jettison the U stages of the evil inclination, just like a rocket, the aspects that a person has already overcome, there are three methods, depending on the person standing in a struggle between the good and evil inclination. The first stage of ascent in divine service is to overcome the evil inclination. In this case, the struggle is fairly balanced between good and evil. Good's victory at this stage is expressed only in the fact that a person's actual behavior follows God's command. His thoughts, speech, and action are in accord with Torah's demands, but his emotions, even including the attributes of the evil inclination, are as strong as they ever were. So meaning you can control yourself. You may feel an urge to do something wrong, but the first stage is at least make the right choice and don't listen to your evil urges. The second stage is to destroy the evil inclination. Our sages tell us that as a result of King David's many fasts, he so weakened his evil inclination that he killed it. This is a stage at which the evil inclination has still not been completely transformed. It is still not assisting in divine service, but it is no longer an obstacle either. In an intermediate stage between forcibly overcoming the evil inclination and the much higher stage of transforming it. The third and ultimate stage in our divine service is transformation. This is the stage when a righteous person has completely transformed his evil inclination to good until it has become exactly like the good inclination. The sages find a hint of this in the verse, "You chose Abraham, the first Jew, and you found his heart, levavo in Hebrew, faithful before you." Well, now here you're going to need a little bit of Hebrew. The verse could have used, we'll explain it though, the verse could have used the word libo, which is one letter base, libo, but instead you levavo, which used a double of letter, about which our sages comment that his two hearts were faithful, meaning why is there two consonants all of a sudden in the word heart? Well, the sages hint to us because in Hebrew, he's trying to hint to you there's two parts of your heart, the good and evil inclination. Both hearts, meaning with all your hearts, with both your inclination, has become one in their faithfulness to God, as in he made his enemy his friend. Every victory in a specific area is followed by the removal of the evil inclination that accompanied that stage. And this way it becomes possible to progress from stage to stage, to become more and more pure without needing to worry about too much excess baggage. Meaning that this idea of making your enemy your friend, there's two ways to have a victory. One, you can beat them up, shove them to the ground, or in a war kill them and destroy them and bomb them. And, you bomb them enough and kill enough people, you won. But then you destroyed the enemy. There's a higher level of victory when you transform your enemy to become your friend. And then not only did you have to spend money to bomb them and kill them, and obviously took a few losses yourself, but then becomes even better because now he's on your side and he becomes a friend and not an enemy. So he helps you instead of just become in the way and getting in the way of what you want to be done in the world. I mean, that would be a political issue. So here also, inside of our hearts, the best thing would be for the evil inclination to not only be resistant to you, but to be on your side. For example, we talked about money before. You could say, those people are so materialistic and all they want is money. Or else you say, well, I have a drive for money, but look how much charity I can do. Look how much goodness I could do with that money. So instead of being so materialistic and only selfish and think about yourself, what do I want and what am I going to get? So you take that drive, which initially was evil because it was just only materialistic, and you turned it over, and now look how much good you could do from that. You could actually help so many more people with all the money and all the power that you have achieved. That would be the greater victory, instead of just stifling yourself, of transforming yourself to good. Environmental risk management. Well, we always like that. That's a big thing with the green. Let's see how he says it here. One of the major areas of concern in the planning of manned space missions was to avoid any damage or danger from bacteria, whether spaceborne or transported from Earth. All precautions were taken regardless of cost, inconvenience, or discomfort to the astronauts. Even germs that do not cause any damage on Earth had to be avoided, for there could be surprising changes in the unknown environment of space. Thus, additional care was needed to avoid even possible danger. From this, we can derive a spiritual lesson. When there are changes in our world, whether technological, societal, we must be aware of them and take special care to respond with increased watchfulness in areas of goodness and holiness. Our sages tell us every day's curse is greater than the one before. The intent is not to frighten, heaven forbid. Rather, we must be aware that since the physical and material aspects of the world are constantly changing, it is insufficient to maintain the same spiritual level that we achieved in the past. Rather, we must constantly add to and grow in areas of holiness every day, continuously brightening and illuminating. Only then can we overcome the added materialism in the world and even utilize it and transform it to holiness. I mean, I just heard recently that someone who, I say I'm 29 years old, man, a little bit older with my white beard. But in any case, someone who lived for the last 50 years have seen more changes in their lifetime than anybody would see in the whole entire history of the world. So if you think about it, obviously the idea of, well, first of all, we just said space travel. It's incredible. No one could even go into space and go into the moon. This is, again, it's just about 40 years, whatever, the last 50 years. Computers, the incredible power of computers. So what we have to do, even physically, even in normal world, is to keep up. It's difficult for me to tell you the truth with all these different electronic equipment to keep up with the world. But also that teaches us a lesson. Spiritually, you have to keep up also. There's a lot of more resistance and a lot of more materialism in the world that there ever were, and the society's values are different, and we have to keep up with whatever is happening and to be able to overcome them. It's a very important lesson that I think that we have to get into, and also with the environment. Just want to bring out that Judaism is not like stuck in the past. I mean, it's a little bit weird when I say that, because, well, wait a minute, the whole idea is that Judaism is the same for the last 3,300 years. So what do you mean you're not in the past? You're not modern. It's the same Sabbath they've been keeping for 3,300 years ago. We say, well, that's beautiful, something you can connect with your parents and grandparents, great-grandparents. It's the same idea. So what do I mean that you have to keep up? Well, you could do both. That's really the beauty of it. You can be faithful to your traditions. At the same time, you don't have to be stuck in the past. You can look for things that are proper, again, maybe not materialistic and surely not evil. But for example, computer, is it good or bad? Well, nothing bad about a computer. It could be bad if people look at the wrong things or use it for the wrong things, obviously. But obviously it could be used for a tremendous amount of good things. Well, we're right now on television. Is it good or bad? Well, maybe if a person just wastes their time and a child doesn't do their homework, hey, what are you wasting your time on the TV? Read a book or learn something. So obviously it could be used for the wrong things, but obviously it could be used for the right things. Well, here we are. We're teaching and disseminating in beautiful, deep ideas throughout the television. So anything we can use for good or for evil. And therefore, we have to keep up with those changes. And if something could be used for good, and obviously television, computers are a tremendous good, if you use them for good, hey, let's use them and use them in the proper way. And that would be a way of continuing the goodness or keeping up with everything good and that's in the world. Like we say, in the environment also, different movements, or even the women's movement. People say, well, Are you into that also? It says, yeah, yes, we are. If anything's good, we are into it. First of all, I mean, it could give a whole talk in its own right how Judaism is sensitive to the environment, just around just cutting down trees. It's really right in the Bible, it says that. But like I say, we can give a whole talk about that. But yes, we're right up with the latest issues. And with the women also, that the women have an incredible function in Judaism, and they're not just to be left in the back seat. And they have a lot of things that they actually are better than men. And again, that would be dedicate a whole TV show for that also, women's issues. But suffice to say right now, they're using like space and saying, oh, what's space, and it's modern. Nothing wrong with being modern. There's nothing wrong with, even of course, sure, most people would say that, but even in Judaism, classic Judaism would say that also. Just use everything you have for the proper functions. Things obviously could be used for evil also, like what we say, waste of time and wrong things and wrong purposes. But then, that's where our free choice comes in, and that's what the Rebbe's bringing out here also. Maybe there is resistance and you have to make your way and pioneer your way and use things for the proper way. Well, but that's our mission on the world. It's not just to sit around and float through water. One last little idea, that one person had a little talk, and I remember he said that you have to be a live fish. What's the difference between a live fish and a dead fish? Well, there is a lot of salmon, I know, in upstate New York or into Canada. And a live fish, if people know, they go fishing, though, goes against the current of the water. That's a live fish. If you see a live salmon, they're going against the water. But what's a dead fish? Well, obviously they're not swimming, they're not doing anything, so they just go along with the current. So therefore, we have to be live fishes then, even though things are thrown our way. Hey, are we using them the proper way, or transform them into the proper way, transform them to goodness, and not just be dead fish and just go along with everything that everybody is given to us, that we have to make our own way and make the world better. And even though that's the whole point here, is even though there's resistance to that we can achieve so much more by overcoming the resistance. Thank you very much for listening to The Jewish View, and we'll talk to you soon.